The time is just gone. 9 minutes past 8 a.m. as we kick off this morning, linking up shortly with Mabrur Ahmed, founder of Restless Beings. And we are talking about Myanmar, where Facebook, their systems promoted violence against Rohingya. And we're talking about the Facebook owner, Meta, the dangerous algorithms, and the reckless pursuit of profit sustainability, how this has actually contributed to the atrocities perpetrated by the Myanmar military against the people of Rohingya in 2017. Now, this was a report that was published by Amnesty International, and we're going straight across to be joined in the UK by the founder of Restless Beings, Mabrur Ahmed. Mabrur, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jummah Mubarak and welcome.
Walaikum assalam, khair Mubarak, and I hope you are well, Brother Inayat.
Yes, Alhamdulillah, we're doing very well now. This is quite an interesting development, looking at Facebook, looking at the systems, how they promoted violence against Rohingya, and we're looking at the Facebook owner, Meta, talking about algorithms, about reckless pursuit of profit sustainability, and how this has contributed to the plight of the Rohingya people, Mabrur.
Yeah, this is obviously referring back to what the genocide was happening in like kind of August, September 2017, and many people across Burma, across Myanmar, were able to access and spread hate messages against the Rohingya, and they were able to do so for a very long time without any kind of any restriction. And there was even very, very famous, very graphic and horrible to see, but very famous examples of soldiers who were, causing all sorts of terror to Rohingya villages and homes and people, literally filming themselves, almost taking selfies and sticking them up on Facebook. And then those videos were being shared en masse on a huge scale across Myanmar, kind of vilifying the Rohingya, and this was all done, like I said, for a number of months, for a long time, and on a very large scale, without any restriction, and that's what this report is in reference to.
Yes, Mabrur. And also, I'm just looking at how this thing is actually termed, and this is quite appropriate, calling it the social atrocity.
Yeah, absolutely. Because one thing that's quite apparent, and because even if you just look at Myanmar itself as just a case study, in the same way that the whole country turned against the Rohingya in 2017, in exactly the same pattern, in exactly the same format, the same thing happened, but this time against the military in February 2021 when the coup happened. So on one hand, you have this military perpetrating this genocide against the Rohingya people, and practically the whole of Burma, the whole of Myanmar stands with the military when they're causing this havoc. And then merely a couple of years later, once the military is now starting a coup d'état in Myanmar, using the same methodology once again, people are coming out on the streets, huge numbers, to protest against the military. So you can see the power that social media has, especially in Myanmar. And so therefore, you really have to question the role of the social media giants, and are they promoting good, are they promoting bad, or should they even be allowed to promote either of those things? And then the next question comes off, of course, what is our freedom of expression on social media in real and in person and in real life, and why are they different? Why should they be different?
Exactly. And the whole question of morality again, and this raises huge question marks against social media, and in this particular instance, Facebook in particular, because here we're talking of the spread of the harmful anti-Rohingya content, and how this has basically contributed. And this report talks about intensifying a storm of hatred against the people of Rohingya, Mabrur.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a very quick example to explain to you how these things happen, right? So, see, as more and more time is going, we're becoming more and more aware of this phenomenon known as the metaverse, right? So now according to the way that the metaverse works, you can buy tickets to watch your favorite band playing in a exotic location or whatever on the metaverse. So this is something that you have in reality, and now you're taking it off grid into this another world, right? So, and in that another world, you are able to do things that you are not able to do in this world. So, the social media and is the very first steps towards that. So, in person, in real life, you can't go around, calling people all sorts of names and saying that these crimes should be committed against you. We hate you. We don't like you based on your race, based on your religion, based on your caste, based on your name, based on your gender, based on whatever. But online you can. Online you can do these things seemingly without anyone restricting you. And I guess this is what Amnesty are calling for, that not only can you have restriction, but actually those who suffer as a result should also get reparation. Because then that then puts people and the state more accountable and more likely to clamp down on hate speech. But like I said,
Yes.
the entire movement is moving towards this idea of a fictional world where you can do whatever you want, and that's connected to the real world.
Yes, but also, Mabrur, at this point in time, Meta is not held to account. The company is not being held responsible. And, the key issue here is when one looks at, how this is basically played out. And when we look at this campaign, the murders that had taken place, the rapes, the burning of homes, and all the violence. And clearly, there is a strong case for reparations.
Oh, without question. Without question, there is a strong case. Not a strong case, it's a very strong case for reparations, because in reality, if people were able to go around and share hate in such a en masse style, without question, you could connect the two and say, therefore, people were killed as a result of your spreading of hate. But online, it's a different proposition, because the argument is that in the same way that um, people of Burma started to vilify the Rohingya as a result of social media, in the same way they were able to get together to stand up to their oppressive power, the military, just a few years later through online organization. So that
Yes.
so they would the I suppose the real question or the real issue is, when does a social media giant pick and choose what is morally correct and incorrect?
Exactly. And especially, when we find that even the UN's independent international fact finding mission on Myanmar concluded that the role of social media was significant in the atrocities that were committed.
Absolutely, but again, I come back to my point. The role of social media is also significant when it comes to the attempt to overthrow the military power in Myanmar. So at that time, we're saying it's okay, but then in 2017, we're saying it's not okay. I don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that the Facebook shouldn't be paying reparations to people. I 100% believe they should. I'm just saying this is the argument that Facebook make. The argument that Facebook make is that when people come together, of course, sometimes you're going to get some hatred and whatnot, but on most other times you're going to get goodness. Now, it's not up to the social media to be the morality police. That's their argument. My argument is very different. I believe that there absolutely should be morality police. If you're in that position where you're responsible for networking, billions of people together, there should be some sort of authority which says, no, you can't talk about these things or you can't share these things. Absolutely. Right. And I think that the crazy thing is Facebook and Instagram and then Twitter and all of the rest of them actually do have guidelines about what can and cannot be used, right? What you can and cannot share. Um, but and then again, it comes down to, well, how strongly do they clamp down on certain things? So, for example, the clamp down on nudity, for example. But there's a lot of people that will push that idea and notion of nudity very, very close to the edge and not face any kind of repercussions. And then there's other, and then another thing is that you're not allowed to share racism and hatred and stuff. And in a lot of cases, again, that's not allowed. But then when it's against the Muslim, when it's against the Rohingya in 2017, seemingly it's happened en masse, and no one's really blinked an eye. And since even though it's been proven time and time again that actually, and I know that many of my Rohingya colleagues were actually asked to go and testify in San Alto in America to the Facebook offices, and still there are no reparations. They went and gave actual, full accounts of what happened and the horrific that happened, and still nothing has happened. It just tells, I mean, it speaks to me in a way which says that there's clearly an anti-Muslim agenda by some of these social media organizations, but they want to have certain rules and regulations which they will apply to certain communities and certain times. Apart from being hypocritical, I can't really see what else the role of these social media organizations are, because it has to be one rule for all, right?
Exactly. In fact, this was the point I was going to make. Is what is blatant and stands out is the hypocrisy, because when we look at many other issues, for instance, anti-Semitism, and we know how hard they actually come against people who are or who are deemed to be anti-Semitic or who would post anti-Semitic content. The same one can say about what's been playing out with Russia in the Ukraine in terms of what you need to post. We know, obviously speaking out, obviously criticizing the Holocaust, that is a crime, that's an international crime. So there's just so much, even when one looks at things like the LGBT, there are so many issues where the hypocrisy is just so blatant, Mabrur.
Absolutely, and like you said, it's not just towards one community. There seems to be quite clearly an anti-Muslim narrative, right? And then it's almost fair game for everyone else, but it seems to be it's an anti-Muslim, and this is where they'll turn a blind eye and they won't clamp down on anything. There's so many examples you just mentioned about five. I think one that really stands to me is a few years ago. I think there was a fire in France in one of their famous buildings, and there was a whole Facebook and Instagram filter which said "Stand with France," right? And in exactly the same moment, there were huge other catastrophes and terrible loss of life in many other countries, Muslim countries, and people ask the question, why is there nothing for stand with another country? It's only stand with France. Why is it these so-called Western powers and these Western Europe and the ideals of Western Europe are essentially thrust down the throats of the entire world social media populations, and then the moment that it's something which seems that might be in support of a Muslim or a non-Western perspective, then suddenly these things do not apply anymore. Like you said, and like I've said as well, the hypocrisy is wanton. It's whenever they want. Even the hypocrisy doesn't have consistency. And I suppose it's a good thing that Amnesty are requesting for reparations to be paid, and it's something that we should all kind of stand behind and advocate as well. One of the things when a genocide happens or when any type of violence happens, one of the very first things that we can all almost immediately get together with is we want to stand up in protest and in solidarity, and we want to stop this pain and persecution and the killings and the violence. And that's a good step. But sometimes what the community doesn't continue to carry on to do is to say, well, actually, these people have been killed. Their lives have been destroyed. Not only are we abhorrent in our hate towards or in our distrust towards the authorities that caused this, but more than that, these people need reparations. They need their homes back. They need to be given money for the loss of life, and they need to be given some better opportunity in an attempt to rebuild their lives. Obviously, in reality, what we know so far as the Rohingya are concerned is neither have they got their land back, nor have they been paid any reparations, and nor are they in any better position to be given more opportunity. In fact, all of the things opposite to that have happened. They've absolutely lost their homes. They're not even allowed to call themselves Rohingya by identity. And now, in the camps in Bangladesh, they have far less opportunity than the very, very limited opportunity that they had in their home country of Myanmar. So in almost every single direction and way that you look at it, the Rohingya are far worse off than they were 5 years ago before the genocide. And absolutely no one in the world is going to do anything about it. It's going to be allowed to continue. So these reports from Amnesty are absolutely important and necessary because they represent, at least if nothing else, a sea change of mentality, which we hope will trickle down to the community in years to come, probably. But also in years to come, that if another community was to go through this, that they don't have to fight so hard.
Mabrur, just finally, are we expecting something to come out of this report? Are there any options to pursue at this point in time?
Well, from the Amnesty report, you mean?
Yes.
I mean, realistically, I don't see the Amnesty report, leading to reparations for the Rohingya. No, I don't. And I'm not being pessimistic about this. I'm just being pragmatic about it. But what it does do, and this is why it's necessary, like I said, what it does do is it starts to represent a shift in psychology, even by these human rights organizations, um, and therefore the people who read it, the politicians, the academics that are going to read it, could lead to in future, other communities and perhaps even the Rohingya themselves being able to gain reparations before it could even be a thought in the back of the mind of social media giants that, look, guys, we really have to clamp down on this hate because we might have to pay reparations to 2 million people further down the line. That might be enough because, obviously, as we know, almost every single one of these social media organizations is set up as a capitalist entity where the only pursuit is the pursuit for money and capital. And so therefore, hit them where it hurts, right? I think that they're most interested in is making money. So if there is a threat to have to pay money, then perhaps they will start acting responsibly. That's the whole point of the Amnesty report. I don't think it's going to happen from the Amnesty report, but I think if the threat is on the table and it's serious enough, and enough people have read it, and enough people are aware of it, then social media giants will be thinking, perhaps for the next time, we shouldn't do this. But also, maybe if there is another case that comes along for the Rohingya, or maybe even at the ICJ case, now the Gambia can also say not only were Myanmar guilty of genocide, but also the people require reparations. And the precedent is here because Amnesty report have called for it in such and such report. That's where this report is going to be useful, not necessarily in immediately impacting and getting people reparations.
Well, Mabrur, as always, we do appreciate you taking time out. Jazakallah for your time, as always. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Mabrur Ahmed joining us this morning, and the Amnesty International Secretary General and Agnes Callamard made the statement while the Myanmar military was committing crimes against humanity against the Rohingya, Meta was profiting from the echo chamber of hatred created by its hate-spiring algorithms. And also, this summarized so well by a Rohingya activist, Mohammed Shawifi, who says that the Rohingya just dream of living in the same way as other people in this world. But you, Facebook, you destroyed our dream. The time is just gone, 8:27. We come back. We still got a lot more to talk about. We will be remembering the life of the late Imam Abdullah Harun with his daughter, Fatima Harun Masood.